Oh, hello everyone. Happy Friday Eve, aka Thursday. It is Jevon Wooden, and I'm here with my guy Jake Thompson, and we're going to talk about an important topic. It's important now more than ever, as many of us are facing a lot of adversity, and we need to remember how to compete every day. So we have the expert on here. He can introduce himself better than I can. So Jake, tell the people who you are and why this topic is important for you.
Dude, yeah, excited to be here. Thanks for the invitation. My name's Jake Thompson, Chief Encouragement Officer and founder of a brand called Compete Every Day. Majority of my work is spent as a keynote speaker and performance coach for teams around leadership and sales. Man, the idea of the reason competing so important, right, is if you have goals, if you have things you want to achieve in life, you got to strive toward them. You got to be intentional. And what happens most often in life is we get distracted. We get pulled in every direction. Our focus is always under attack. And so what happens more than not is we unintentionally start to drift, right? We unintentionally start to go through the motions. We unintentionally just kind of clock in, clock out. And then we look up one day and we find ourselves in what I call the default outcome. It's that place where you had no desire to get there, right? Whether we're talking about, man, my pants don't fit anymore. They're a little too tight, to my relationship, what happened to it, to how did I get to this point in my career? It's often the result of us just kind of going through the motions and lacking the intentionality. And so the importance of being competitive, not with anybody else, but more specifically with that person you see in the mirror every day, is more vital than ever, because if you want to achieve something, it's kind of on you right now to take that action toward it.
Mm. Yes, you said a word, and intentionality is big, but it also this thing agency, right? Meaning we have something that we can do and we can control. So how did you come across this? Like, what happened in your life that you were just like, man, I need to compete every day?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I've always been an ultra competitive guy growing up. I grew up here in Texas. As you know, as a Texas guy, you used to have like football's king, right? I'm a small town
Yes.
Texas kid. And so for me, competition was life. And I really leaned into it as a way to prove I could outwork people and I could outsmart them. I was never going to be the best athlete. So I had to find other ways to play. The problem I ran into as I got older is I started attaching so much of my worth, so much of my confidence and my identity in could I beat you? It was always about competing with other
Mm.
people. And that's where I base so much of my value is could I be better than you? And so what happened is it allowed my worth, my confidence, my actions to be put in other people's hands. And there came to a point years later where really that mindset shifted. I was in a spot, I was probably 60 pounds heavier than I am now. I was making decent money in a marketing consulting role, but I was incredibly unfulfilled. And I was like, I got to change the narrative. I got to change life. All the things I thought I was going to do, my dream job, all this other stuff, none of it was coming to fruition the way I wanted it. And I was expecting there to be just this magical point of change. And honestly, the realization for me was funny enough. I was home one time for like holidays. I think it was around Christmas. I was walking around the house with my shirt off, and my dad just kind of made a joke about me filling out. And I'd
Mm.
always been this super skinny kid, and like it wasn't mean hearted or anything like that. He was just like, you're really filling out now. Like maybe lay off the beer, but like maybe change some of those habits. And
Like,
I
hey,
realized it
watch
was
it
like,
now. You
I
getting a little
know,
K, get in the
I know.
midsection.
And I remember I was like, oh my God, I've gotten fat. And I was always the kid who could never put on weight. And now I did. And I was like, I got to change it. But I knew I couldn't change it overnight, right? It's that moment where you either have to admit, like, I got to start putting in some work and it's not going to be immediate to get back to where I was, or you just say the why bother, right? If, I can't be what I was when I was 18 or 25, like, why bother? And I really leaned into the idea, like, I want to change it. So I went back to the gym. And for the first time in my life, I stopped kind of worrying about what everybody else was doing. Before I'd be like, oh, how much are they lifting? Or,
Right.
what do they look like? But really, it was just like, what am I doing today to get better? Like, what am I doing today to chip away at this? And I would do it playing basketball to lifting weights. And over the course of 6 to 8 months, not only physically did I change, but mentally the change was there. And people would ask, like, what's going on? Like, you seem to have a little more confidence. You're showing up differently. And they were right. I wasn't walking into rooms to try to get people to like me or accept me or to prove I was better than someone else so people would respect me. It was just, how am I getting better? And so I tell people I'm just competing with myself. And then eventually I started CrossFitting, which really put another spin on it because it was me versus the clock. Like, can I do better than I did the time before? And after 6 to 8 months of like really talking about this, somebody was like, hey, you should do something with it. And I eventually settled into a box of shirts and tanks with CED compete every day and started selling them out of the trunk of my car. And so it was
Nice.
really that moment of, for all of us in our framework, we've got a compete framework that we walk everyone through, from school teachers to sales teams. But really the big piece of it is what you talked about, is this idea of agency. And we call it the P. It's owning your starting position, the starting blocks of a race. Like, if you were to run track, when you get in the starting blocks, there's no change. Like, you can't wish you would have trained better. You can't add more training. You can't change your skill set. Like, you're about to race with what you've got. And the beauty of that moment is, like, once you realize that, like, this is all I've got with to race today, but I can get better for tomorrow, then you start to have agency and start taking those steps. And I think what stops most people is they don't want to take agency for their position in life. And I say that very cautiously, because every one of us come from different backgrounds, different demographics, different religion, all sorts of things. And there's things that have happened to you listening or watching this that are outside of your control. Inevitably, there are things that have happened to you outside of your control. Some terrible things for people, and you don't control that. And so I'm not saying you have to own that those things happen to you, but you do have to own your response into them. And
Absolutely.
you do have to own where you are today and just say, hey, this is the reality of where I'm starting, whether I have advantages, have different advantages, or have no advantages. Because once you own that starting line, then you can start to improve it. You can take agency, as you said, over your life. And then you start striving toward what better looks like, versus doing what I've done, what a lot of people do. And that's just kind of waiting on someone else, hoping someone else will come and deliver that opportunity for you.
Man, you said so many gems right there, and I knew this wasn't going to be a good one, because competing every day, and I like how you took us through the fact that initially you were looking at others to compete with, like subconsciously or consciously, you were like, oh man, this guy, I want to lift what that guy's lifting. But then you turned it into an intrinsic motivator where you're like, you know what, let me just be a little bit better than I was yesterday, that 1% better, and exponentially better by the end of the year. You even 6 to 8 months, you were turning it into something completely different, where everyone can learn and get that spark to compete every single day. And I know we have
Here's
some
something I
listeners
was about to
here.
say. I
Oh,
want
go
to
ahead,
I
go
want
ahead.
to piggyback on that real quick as we talk external and internal, because you said that intrinsic motivation. Here's the crazy part about the research, and my next book that's coming out in the spring really dives into this. Around the research shows the people who are intrinsically motivated, they are competing with themselves, they're pursuing things, they do far better, not only from an achievement standpoint, but from a mindset, a mental health standpoint, than those who
Absolutely.
are constantly externally validated. So when you're me, right? Because there's someone always ahead of us. There's someone always ahead of us, Jevon. There's somebody always behind us, right? If you're always staring at the person
100%.
ahead of you, you're a lot of times demotivated because of the gap. And if you're staring at the person behind you, you often get lazy and fat because you're like, well, I'm better than they are in my career. And so the people internally driven are it. There was a separate study that showed, like, competitive racers, marathoners, endurance athletes, triathletes, the ones who are driven by the external, the awards, the accolades, the prizes, the medals, they're actually the average. They're the average runners, the best of the best, internally driven. And so the key piece of it for everybody watching to understand is the pursuit of being your best is actually the most important pursuit. And what often happens is when you become committed to pursuing your best, you often become the best along the way. But when you only pursue becoming the best, you put yourself in a really dangerous position from an identity, from a confidence, from a mental health, as well as a long-term accolades and achievement standpoint.
Yeah. And one question to that one. So a lot of people,
Yeah.
they're listening, they're like, I strive to be the best I can be, but am I striving to be the best I can be towards the right goal? So how do they identify what that right goal really is?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I got to ask, last week at a speaking event I was doing for a lot of young professionals in the accounting and finance space, and they were asking around the idea of purpose, which really leads into that, right? How do I make
Yep.
sure I'm competing for and pursuing my purpose? And they were like, as my Frenchie Bulldog decides to join us, they were like,
Hey, he's
how
welcome.
do I
We're dog
know?
friendly over here.
Man, I got four of them in this office, so they're nuts.
Wow.
They were asking around this idea of a lot of people like accounting and finance isn't my passion. It's not my purpose. So how am I supposed to find my purpose? And I told them, I said, what's interesting? I didn't set out like competing every day and speaking to be my purpose. I just said, how can I help other people? And what I
Right.
found is like when we show up and do the work every day to improve ourselves, and then we have the perspective of how can I add value to one other person today? How can I add value to, how can I make someone's day better? How can I encourage them? How can I teach them something? You often find your purpose in that journey. And what happens though is I think so often we don't take steps. We would call it productive procrastination from improving ourselves, from showing up and growing because we're worried, well, what if I'm going down the wrong path? Like I got to
Right.
figure out my passion. I got to figure out my goals before I do this. And my thought process is like, if you are improving yourself, like that's agnostic in terms of direction. Like whatever
Right.
goal you're pursuing, there's never a wrong day to say, hey, how do I be a better coworker? How do I be a better leader, a better parent, a better spouse? Like doing something intentionally every day to improve is not going to put you in the wrong position. Then from a career, from a life standpoint, the two ways to look at it is one, how do I add value to someone else every day? And the second thing I tend to say is come at everything with a sense of curiosity until
There
you
you go.
think you've got it. And then you say no to everything. And that's the hardest switch, right? It's early on, especially people listening early in your career. Like you should be saying yes to so many opportunities and mentors to learn and experiment and figure out what you like and what lines your strengths with opportunities to grow and improve. But once you start to get clarity on that direction, you've got to shift to saying no to everything that takes you away from it. Because the trap a lot of people fall into is they say yes to too much for too long. And so if you're worried about
Absolutely.
your purpose and your passion and what you're doing, like just focus on, hey, how am I getting better and how am I helping someone else get better every day? And you'll start to see more dots connect. And if you're early in your career, or heck, you're making a career change, just enter it with a sense of curiosity. And you start to see pretty quick, like, I have some natural ability in this area. I want to work at it. I'm not going to rely on that, but some natural ability. It seems like there's some opportunity. This may be it. Now let me start saying no to all the things that are taking me off course from this.
Yeah, and I love that you use the word curiosity because I feel like as we become adults, a lot of us lose that or we're fearful to kind of lean into that curiosity. So what you're talking about really, Jake, is like you have to be courageous with experimenting, right? With
Yeah.
actually living versus going through the motions. And that's where a lot of us get stuck is we don't live. We're alive, but we're not really living. We're not really experiencing things. We're not open to serendipitous moments. We're not open to failing forward. We're not open to so many things. And that is why a lot of us think that purpose is just some magical thing when it's really not like so I
Is
love
well, and
that
you
you're
said the
bringing
right
that too.
word. You said the key word for everybody, and I want to call it up so that they're paying attention. You said experiment. And
Yes.
you said this idea of science. And the way I look at it, so many of us are scarred from high school or college of final exams that we think if we make the wrong move or I pursue the wrong path, that failed. I'm out of luck. I can't do it. I won't pass the class.
Hmm.
If you look at it, if you talk to yourself, if you reframe it as science experiments, scientists is like, hey, I have an idea. I have a hypothesis. Let me test it. I'm going to test it. I'm going to get feedback. I'm going to take that feedback. I'm either going to do it again if it worked. And if it didn't, I'm going to change a variable. And that's where we really, I mean, it's like people that trying to figure out like what's the best nutrition plan. I can go vegan and gluten-free and paleo and keto. And it's like, test it, see how your body responds. Your body's going to
Right.
respond differently than my body. Like we all have different allergies. But you look at it not of, hey, I failed. Hey, I got it wrong. Hey, the data just said this wasn't the right fit. Let me find new data. Let me test something else. And so if you lean into that word you said, and if listeners lean into it, it changes how you show up because it stops doing what I did, which is attaching your worth and your identity to an outcome that's beyond your control and puts it back into this idea of what am I doing every day to be intentional and improve.
Absolutely. And when I think about that, I think like first principles thinking. Like, instead of being so focused on, getting all everything right, just break it down. Like if I have a goal, I'm like, okay, first principles thinking tells me what is the smallest little one step that I can take to move
Yeah.
forward. And eventually that consistency and that word you used earlier, that intentionality will get you those large gains. It's, a lot of times we want to eat the whole elephant, so to speak, without really being willing to take the steps and investing the time and the curiosity and experimenting and all that it really takes. When we think of all the greatest accomplishments and achievements, how many of those were mistakes from just doing something and experimenting, and how many of those required hundreds if not thousands of failures to get to that one invention or one insight? So I'm
Yeah.
I'm loving this conversation, man.
And even just piggybacking on that, right? I think of something like, let's talk career wise, right? There's a lot of people that have interviewed for a lot of jobs and positions and they haven't gotten them.
Yes.
And they can look at them as failures. Oh, I didn't get it, didn't get it, didn't get it. And for a lot of people, it will stay a failure because they miss one key ingredient. For us, it's the T in our compete frameworks: take time to review. Like if you do an interview, you should always ask yourself 3 questions. Like, what did I do well in that interview? What do I want to do better in the next one, and how? Sometimes it's like we don't know the company we're really interviewing for. Like we didn't do research. We were really good with the questions we knew, but we weren't ready for it. So, okay, next time I need to do better research on the company I'm going to sit down and have a conversation with. And here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to set aside an hour this week to study these 3 companies that I've got applications in, right? It always becomes that learning process if we take the time to evaluate the 2 things, right? What did we do well? And what's one thing we want to do better next time? Because then it gives us targets to apply that following. We just often don't do it because it's a little bit of extra work. And
Right.
we're more frustrated and emotional about not getting the job than we are to say, hey, what's the feedback? What's the data in this experiment that I got back that I can use? And the way I look at it, man, if you're going to be disappointed, if you're going to miss an opportunity, lose a sale, not get a promotion, and you're going to go through the emotional turmoil, you got to get something good out of it. And so that's where that evaluation is so key.
Ooh, that's fire right there, man. You got to, if you're gonna go through the emotional turmoil, get something good out of it. Find the jewels, right?
Find
So
the
you
jewels,
mentioned this
find the
framework
jewels.
a couple of times, right? You
Yeah.
mentioned this framework, so now we can't leave this conversation and leave the people hanging without covering the framework. So my man Jay, can we get that framework, brother?
Yeah. Super easy. So like most people, the question, a lot of people are asking, how do I win today? And the reality is twofold. One, you're not going to win every day. 2, outcomes are out of your control. Anybody that's ever been in sales understands this. Like you don't control the sale. You do everything you
Right.
can to put the buyer in the best position to make the decision, but they still have a decision outside of your control. Every one of us as speakers, you and I, right? COVID, big game changer. There's a lot of things out of our control we had to pivot with. So the question we love to ask is, what am I doing to compete today? And so for us, the compete framework is it. It's C is clarify the game. This one I think is the most important is what's the game you're actually caring about winning and who's your competition? The reason I say this is most of us get caught in our lives playing this comparison game with other people who are chasing different goals and targets than we care about entirely. We're just measuring ourselves against highlight reels. And so we need to get super clear, even as speakers, you and I both speakers, right? The beauty of our industry is, man, there's a million people that have done this business a million different ways. And there's some of my friends that
Absolutely.
are speakers that I want nothing to do with their business model. And there's other ones where I'm like, I'd love to learn from you. And so clarifying the game is really important because the worst thing we can do is spend our efforts winning a game we actually didn't care to win. So clarify the game and know who you're in competition with, because most of us, the competition is not someone else. It's our bad habits. It's our limiting beliefs. It's our poor self-talk or the talk we allow around us. And so once we get clear on those things, then we can start to kind of win those games. The O for us is observe the rules. Just like football is about to kick off tonight, thank goodness, man, you
Oh,
got to know the rules of the game to win the game. And so for a lot of us, right, if you want to be, man, you want to be a great sports parent, what are the rules of that game, right? It's pay attention on the car ride home. It's when you're at practice, don't be on your phone, be watching your kid. It's let the coach, right? There's rules to being a great sports parent, just like there is rules to being a great leader and a great manager. Know your people, get great at feedback. You got to understand what the rules are to succeed at the game that you care about winning in order to play the game. The M for us is model. What does world-class excellence look like? What does that excellent standard modeling look like? Because you want to know the gap. I heard Alex Smith, who was former number 1 overall pick in the NFL, played for the 49ers and Chiefs and Washington. he talked about when he came into the league, he didn't know what world class looked like. Like he was a number one overall draft pick, but the NFL was a different level. And so he looked
Different
up
level.
close at what guys like Peyton Manning and Tom Brady were, the elite of the game, and said, what are their habits? What are their inputs? What are the things in their control that they do consistently that I can start to learn from and apply, right? He saw world class, he saw the standard and said, I'm going to start to model it. Because then he got into the P that we talked about. What's my position? I'm a rookie. I'm brand new to the sales team. This is my first management role. This is my first time being a CEO. Like, I got to own that there's a lot of things I don't know. And here's where I'm short in skill set. Here's where I can improve. But I know what excellence looks like. I'm going to work toward it. The E for us is execution. You got to do the work. Nobody's going to do it for you. You got to put it in day after day after day. And the key is what you talked about earlier. Be where your feet are. Focus on being in the moment today. T is take time every day, every week, and every month to reflect. What'd you do well today? What are you going to do well? What are you going to do better tomorrow? Be intentional about setting those targets. And then the last, the E is one that I know you know so well, but it's all about your environment. Who are you surrounding yourself with? And for me, there's 3 key relationships you should always have, right? It's the person ahead of you, the mentor who you're always learning from. You got to have the peer and that teammate who's in the trenches with you, people around your same career level, pursuit level that are constantly growing, but like you got people to relate with. And then you got to have a mentee. You got to have the ball boy, as I would say it on a sports team, that person that you're always pouring into, because you learn faster when you're teaching. And so we're
Absolutely.
always learning, we're always connected, and we're always teaching. And so that's it, right? Clarify the game, observe the rules, know what the world-class model looks like, own your starting position, execute, because that's where the magic is. Take time to learn and reflect, and then understand what your environment is, because it'll elevate you or it'll hold you back.
Yeah, man. You just gave us a lot of juice. That was a master class, man. Excellent. Excellent. I feel like I'm at your keynote right now. So hey, hey, make sure y'all send the invoice to us, all right? So we can make sure we cover you. Now that was great, brother. And make sure y'all go back and listen to it. If you rewatch this a couple of times, because what Jake just gave you is really the framework to success in any environment or situation you are in. That adversity, like identifying and clarifying, should be the first step in everything that we do. If you are not clear, a confused mind takes no action, right? Or and if it takes
100%.
action, it's probably going to be the wrong action, because action can be to decide not to decide. So we have to really, really lean in on what was just said and take ownership of your pathways. Take ownership of your destiny. Like you said, we're not going to win every day, but if we give our damnness and we do what we can do, like those future days will be a lot better because of it. So, man, Jake, you got me hyped up. I feel like I'm about to go run a couple miles myself. I'm ready to roll, brother. But I want to be respectful of your time. I know we're winding down, so tell the people how they can connect with you and find some more of these jewels.
Yeah, so best place online is going to be our website, competeeveryday.com. And then if you're on social, if you're hanging out with the two of us, LinkedIn, find me as Jake Thompson, and then Instagram, Jake Thompson Speaks. Anything we talked about today, you want to dive in more, man, you know I love to jam on this stuff, so drop me a note.
Yeah, and can they find their book on the website?
Yeah, so competeeveryday.com. You'll find both of my current books, Compete Every Day, Lead Better Now. And then you'll find my next 2 that are dropping this fall and next spring.
Awesome. What's next for you, brother?
Dude, book launches right now is keynote season and book launches. So I've got a fable coming out for high school and college athletes and their parents this fall around some of these things we just talked about, around this framework, told through the story of you guessed it, Friday Night Lights and Texas high school football.
Love it.
That book, The Extra Inch, comes out this fall, and then the big one is next spring, which we'll be talking about in pre-order soon. But yeah, man.
Yeah, keep rocking it, man. And to everyone make sure y'all go follow Jake and go check out his website. He's doing some amazing things. I appreciate you, man. Looking forward to sharing that stage with you one day.
Let's do it.
And just remember to keep going, brother. And
Hey,
to
same
all
to
of you
you.
watching. Now, I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that fantastic conversation. To everyone watching, remember to keep ascending. And I gotta add,